Are we up? Very good. I call the April 27th work session to order. Is there a consideration of the agendas?
Mayor Claffey,
Vice Mayor Darby.
I would like to make a motion to amend the work session and regular meeting agendas. On the work session agenda, let's see, item 5, discussion of location for the City of Staunton Juvenile and Domestic Relations District Court Facility. I would like that to be placed on the regular meeting agenda as item E. And then on the regular meeting agenda, I would like item B, consideration of ordinance to establish a budget for fiscal year 2024, move to item D. So that's at the end of the meeting. I would like item C, consideration of resolution adopting the Virginia Opioid Abatement Authority Gold Standard Incentive, move to item B. So move that up one. And then item D, consideration of memorandum of understanding for the regional P25 radio project, move that to item C. So we're gonna let people get through their items and then have time to.
That last one was my request.
Yes.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Darby.
And then item E will be,
The work session, item 5.
yes, item 5.
Just to clarify, item A, public hearing. Item B, consideration of resolution opioid. C, radio project. D, budget. E, court location.
Yes.
Got it.
I'll second
Okay.
that.
Do that again.
Okay. A stays as it is.
Right.
B is what used to be C, the opioid.
Okay.
D becomes C,
B becomes C. Okay.
the regional radio.
I'm sorry.
No,
B
no.
become, no,
D becomes B, right?
D becomes B.
B as in boy becomes D as in dog.
Yep.
Got you.
C as in cat becomes B as in boy. D as in dog, original D as in dog becomes C as in cat,
Okay. And then we have E, right?
and then adding in E.
Correct.
I'll second that.
Which E?
Thank you. A motion has been made in second.
Courts, right?
Mr. Kesker, please call the roll.
Miss Woods,
Aye.
Mr. Robertson,
aye.
Miss Edwards,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Darby,
Aye.
Mr. Arrowood,
Clarification.
Aye.
Mr. Holmes,
Aye.
Mayor Claffey.
Aye.
Motion carries.
And the first item on our work session agenda this evening is a closed meeting, which we will take place in the back room. And I would like at this point a motion to go into closed session.
Mr. Mayor, before you do that, that was a motion to amend. Could we have somebody make a motion to approve the
Oh,
amended
okay.
agenda?
Very good. Thank you, sir.
Oh, okay.
Mayor Claffey, I move to approve the amended work session and regular meeting agenda.
Thank you. Motion has been made. Is there a second?
I second that.
Gary Holmes, second. Mr. Kesker.
Miss Edwards,
Aye.
Mr. Arrowood,
Aye.
Miss Woods,
Aye.
Mr. Holmes,
Aye.
Mr. Robertson,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Darby,
Aye.
Mayor Claffey.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you for that clarification. Now that brings us to the closed meeting.
So Mayor Claffey.
First,
Counselor Woods.
Yeah,
I
we're going to
move-
go into closed session, so I guess I knew.
They know.
I'm sorry.
I move to enter a closed meeting for consultation with legal counsel for necessary legal related advice and discussion regarding the order to show cause in Stanton Circuit Court case CL 21-500 concerning the Stanton Juvenile and Domestic Relations District Court Facility located in the District Court's building at 6 East Johnson Street, Stanton. Pursuant to Virginia Code 2.2-3711A7 and 2.2-3711A8, discussion or consideration of the acquisition of real property located within the city limits of Stanton, Virginia, for use as a court facility where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position for negotiating strategy of the public body pursuant to Virginia Code 2-2.2.2-3711A3.
Thank you for that. Motion has been made. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Everybody jumps on that second.
All
yes.
second. That's the easy part.
Mr. Kester.
Mr. Holmes,
Aye.
Mr. Robertson,
Aye.
Miss Edwards,
Aye.
Miss Woods,
Aye.
Mr. Arrowood,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Darby,
Aye.
Mayor Claffey.
Aye. We're in
Motion
closed
carried.
session. Did you get settled? Yeah. 6:25, we're returning from the closed session. Do I have a motion?
Mayor Claffey,
Vice Mayor Darber.
I move that council reconvene in an open meeting and certify to the best of each member's knowledge that only lawfully accepted public business matters were discussed and that only public business matters as identified in the closed meeting motion were heard, discussed, or considered in the meeting.
Thank you. A motion has been made. Is there a second?
Mayor Claffey, I second it.
Thank you, Councilor Woods. Mr. Kester, could you please call the roll?
Mr. Robertson,
Aye.
Mr. Holmes,
Aye.
Miss Woods,
Aye.
Miss Edwards,
Aye.
Mr. Arrowood,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Darby,
Aye.
Mayor Claffey.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. That returns us to the discussion of cancellation of summer city council meetings. Ms. Beauregard.
Thank you, Mayor Claffey. So as in previous years or prior years, staff is asking if city council would like to cancel 1 or 2 city council meetings this summer. Last year, the first meeting in July was canceled as well as the first meeting in August. And typically this has been, we've discussed it for one meeting and then there could be an informal poll taken of city council members. And then at the next meeting, a formal action would be taken to cancel 1 or 2 meetings. If something were to occur or we would need a special meeting, then we will deal with that at that time. So at this time, I'd be happy to open it up for discussion. I will say that the July meetings, the first meeting in July is rather late in the month. It's the 13th, which means there's 5 weeks in between the June meeting and that meeting, which is an extra week, which is kind of nice. So that's a little bit later than usual, but that's because there's 5 Thursdays in June. So the meetings we're talking about could be the 13th, the 27th, and then the first meeting in August is the 10th. Typically, we have had the 2 June meetings. Those are the 8th and the 22nd of June. So I'll just open it up for discussion and I can send an email out later as well, asking for some informal feedback as well to make a determination for the next meeting.
I will just say that in the past, I've become aware the last couple of years when you do the 1 meeting a month, which normally happens in November and December, it puts a lot of strain on the other meeting of the month. It makes those longer and there are a lot more stuff that needs to be gone through. So I'm not sure that you're necessarily going to want to cancel both. Last year, we canceled 1 in July and 1 in August.
That is
Yeah.
correct.
And it meant that the sessions that we did have in July and August were pretty lengthy. So
I
it
think
might,
about some of that might have been because we weren't getting along.
well, that's true. too.
I didn't think.
We've, the other side of it might be if we were to cancel the second meeting in July, that would give us about 3 weeks in between the late June meeting and the 13th of July. And then that would give us a month off between there and when we come back in August.
Right, so if you have the June 22nd meeting, you do have an extra week until the 13th, that is correct. And then if you canceled the July 27th, you'd have 1, 2, 3, 4 until the next meeting, which is on August 10th.
And then usually around here, it seems to me that now the children are back at school in the beginning of August. August is not the summer vacation month it used to be. That we got a lot You know, a lot more going on in August than it used to be. I know football season used to never start until September. Now we have football games going on in August, et cetera. But that might be my proposal, just to skip the one meeting in the July 27th. But I'm certainly not just recommending that. Anybody can have other ideas.
Were a lot of people gonna be on vacation?
Well, I'm just going to point out, I'm going to be out on vacation on the 13th. So if, you know, the whole entire council is going to be away, that'll be a problem. Is anyone else going to be out of town on
I
the 13th?
may be gone on the 13th. I don't,
Yeah.
I'm going to be gone sometime during the month of July. I just don't know what. July.
Of July, 13th of July. Okay.
I know I'm on vacation the 16th, but I'll be back by the,
I'll be around to my knowledge.
I don't know, everybody just want to think about it.
We
And,
skip the first meeting in July or and then,
Or the latter one.
I think the first one would be more, because it would be around the 4th and all that stuff.
no, it's the 13th.
I
Actually,
know, but I mean, it's closer to the
The
4th. So
Yeah,
people
yeah.
going on vacation might be gone, you know,
can you send out a doodle poll?
Yeah,
Thank you.
I was just typing that up.
Yeah,
We were
could
just
you-
talking
could
about
you-
that. Yeah, I'll just put out a doodle poll and then whatever the majority
That'll work.
kind of gives me the indication that you would like to do, we'll bring it back at the next meeting to adjust the meeting date or dates accordingly. So how's
Sounds
that
good.
sound?
Sounds
Sounds
Okay,
good,
so just think
everybody.
about it
Yeah,
and
thanks,
looking at your
Leslie.
schedules.
All right.
Great, thank you.
And that brings us to item 4, which is a discussion of sentencing alternatives to the judiciary and local criminal system. Ms. Beauregard.
I turn this over to Councilmember Terry. I ask that this item be added to the agenda along with Councilmember Michelle.
Well, I'm gonna touch on it real fast because what me and Michelle found out was basically they're doing everything that they can to make it work. And one thing we might want to consider is possibly participating in the Pathways program, which is a different program than this. But that does basically similar things. But we talked to, I gotta get my notes out here now. We talked to Megan over at Blue Ridge Court Services, and I talked to Chap Goodwin, he's a judge, a local judge, and we talked, I think both of us talked to the colonel out at the jail. And basically, when people are brought in, they get the opportunity if they qualify to go on house arrest, you know, but main thing is they got to be recommended by the judge or the magistrate.
Magistrate, yeah.
So, and from what I understand from Megan, and most of them are being recommended if they thought they were available. And they're finding that it's a bigger, more and more people are using it. And right now, Megan has about 40 people that do it. And it's 40 people from the city would save us what it was, $1.2 million or something like that, you know. And so it's unless they're really a
Flight risk.
yeah, or they've done something really bad, you know, it's great for people, first offenders who, if you can get them in the program, but they have to opt in. You can't make them opt in. You know, so that's another thing. And my talks with our talks with Megan, I think she does everything. She's very convincing.
And I think Blue Ridge does a really good job with it. But there is a cost to the person as well that they have to pay
Right.
for it.
Yeah,
And
but they
sometimes
can work and they can work and do work release and all that kind of stuff too. They just have to go back home. They can't just go out and do other things.
Right.
You know, but it's a one way of keeping people from getting so financially behind that, you know, if you stay in jail all the time, you have to pay all your fines and everything now. Plus, I think you have to pay some towards your stay there.
But Terry, just want to make sure, and Michelle, this is not, I understand it being offered to first timers, but this is not really something that would be offered to recidivists over and over again, correct?
Right. Or, you know, or somebody who's done a crime like,
A
you know,
violent crime.
assault or,
Yeah.
or murder or child
Yeah,
molestation.
because I mean, to me, we, you know, and I know I'm a little more the right side, but spectrum, but I mean, I want to make sure that the people that have done the crime, you know, pay the time per se, and don't forget about the person that just got wrong.
The biggest thing about this is these people have not been convicted yet.
Right.
So they haven't gone to court.
So they
And
sit
so
there
this
for a
is,
long
instead of keeping them in the jail and us paying $180 a day to keep them in jail.
And Chap was in favor of.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
time.
But there's really nothing that we need to do with
No.
this
No,
because it's
no,
already
there's no,
being
well, I
done.
thought there was something we could do to maybe to get this program going more. But from
don't
talking
think
to
so.
Megan and
Yeah.
the Colonel, they pretty much do everything that we were gonna want them to do anyway.
Yeah, I would
Okay.
agree.
Yeah, so, but we just wanted to bring it before council because, well, it saves us money. I mean, it's gonna cost us $2 million this year for the people that we have in jail.
Right.
That doesn't include just any other fees that we pay for the jail. It's just the hotel out there is it's pretty full of our people. And a lot of times it's not even people from Staunton, it's just people who commit crimes in Staunton.
Correct. And I'll just finish up by saying Megan was extremely thankful for the funds that are always allocated each year. She said Stanton's a huge supporter of the program and is very grateful for the support. And so she
And
doesn't.
she said too, that they have the ability to handle more people. She's got one lady who does it full time and she's got 40 people that she takes care of and she keeps an eye on them. But all the people in there have been cross-trained and they can do this too. And she says, you know, if it became real popular and they had like 80 people, they'd probably have to put another person on. But if they had 40 people from Staunton, it would cost us maybe $50,000 to put another staff member on. And
The savings would be significant.
yes, it would be. I mean, I hate to say it, but you know, jail, even when you not a private jail, it's expensive. I mean, it just kills me to be spending that much money on jail. But I was really pleased. I was glad because I really didn't think that there was a lot going on in this area. But we found out that it was. Yeah.
Well, what can council do?
That's the whole thing. There ain't nothing we can do. I mean, they're already doing it. The Blue Ridge and the jail itself are already doing everything. You know, it's being able to maybe convince people to join the program. That's the thing, you know, because they all are made aware of it as soon as they get in jail. And if they qualify, you know, and I would think most people, if they knew, you know, maybe, I don't know if it's explained to them as well as it should be, but, you know, if they're in there for like maybe a minor drug possession or, you know, maybe even a DUI or something, you know, they might could get out on the bracelet, with a bracelet and be able to work and do things to keep them head above water.
So, so that's where the Pathways program will come in, because that would be a pre-charge diversion program where a person, if the city where law enforcement would recommend that they don't go to jail in the first place with the possession or mental health charges, they can be diverted to the program. And that will be touched on tonight when we go into the opioid abatement grant that we just, that we're going to talk about. And where the city doesn't have to pay any money out, but they would pay through that grant that's coming through the Pathways program to help those that don't even have to be incarcerated. So when you talked about anybody with a possession charge or anybody with mental illness or substance use or alcohol use, then that would be a pre-charge diversion where we would help the people, where the Pathways program helped the people get treatment and the services that they need without even going into the system at all. So that's another discussion for another agenda, and hopefully we can have a presentation with them at one point in time.
Any other questions about this?
No, I appreciate you looking into it.
I tell you, I know a lot of those people at Blue Ridge Court Services, and they do a great job. And and they really care about the people that they're working with. They don't, they don't treat them like criminals. They try to treat them with respect. And they deal with a lot of different things, from anger management, to drug use, to you name it, people just being silly and driving without their license so many times that they go to jail for it. And they're looking for a building.
They down here on Johnson Street.
They're over there up from behind
Above
here.
Mill Street. I don't want them to go because I don't have to worry about, too many criminals hanging out around my place, because
Nice.
Any other questions from members of council?
thank you for indulging us on this.
No, thanks for looking into this. This is good. All right, anything else from council? All right. Item 5 has been moved to the regular meeting as item E. Therefore, we are on break until the regular meeting begins at 7:30.
I'm not getting involved in this.
Good evening, everyone. I would like to call the April 27th, 2023 meeting to order. Would everyone please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And our invocation moment of silence will be brought to us tonight by Councilor Arrowood.
Thank you, Mayor Claffey. I would just like to take a moment tonight, we're honoring the Postal Carriers Food Drive. And along those lines, I'd like to remind people that as the months get warmer, that the need to feed the hungry continues. There are a number of organizations locally and nationally that are taking up this challenge as well. Many local churches, so many, I don't want to name a few with the danger of not naming others, but please consider donating to them. A little bit goes a long way with them. They are doing such a good job in this, but they need more help from us as well too. So please keep them in your thoughts as we go forward into the summer. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we have several proclamations tonight. I'd like to start off with the Arbor Day. In the city of Staunton, Virginia, proclamation of Arbor Day for April 28th, 2023. Whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees. And whereas this holiday called Arbor Day was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska. And whereas Arbor Day is now observed nationally and globally, and whereas trees can reduce the erosion of our precious topsoil by wind and water, cut heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, produce oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife. And whereas trees are a renewable resource giving us paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood products. And whereas trees in our city increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, and beautify our community. And whereas trees, wherever they are planted, are a source of joy and spiritual renewal. And whereas the city of Staunton is being honored this year for the 27th time as a Tree City USA by the Arbor Day Foundation. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by Staunton City Council that April 28th, 2023 is hereby designated as Arbor Day in the city of Staunton, and council urges the residents of Staunton, the region, and the community across the country to observe Arbor Day, to support efforts to protect our trees and woodlands, and to plant trees to gladden the hearts and promote the well-being of this and future generations. Adopted this 27th day of April, 2023. I believe we have Mr. Sensible here to accept this proclamation. Council, like to come for a picture.
Is he going to say a few words?
You gonna talk first?
You really?
We want him to speak.
Okay, I wanted to speak.
Okay. Well, thank y'all for having me again. So this is our 27th year for Tree City USA. You may have heard we had a little storm last July. And if you think it was fun for you, I was in the middle of selling my house and moving when it hit. So I missed a little bit of the cleanup, but we did have some pretty severe damage. We lost 142 trees, but you know, the good news is we've got a couple of really generous donations. So far, we've been able to replace 122 of the 142 that we lost. We will get the final replacements done this fall. This year for Arbor Day, we're kind of keeping things simple and trying to keep things kid oriented. We actually hosted the 5th graders from Ware Elementary today in Gypsy Hill Park. And they actually released some trout that they had raised in their classrooms. And then we walked around and they learned about trees and watersheds and the impacts of what's going on at their school and in their backyard and how it impacts the park and some of the things that we have to face with stormwater management. The other thing we're going to do is pop over to Dixon tomorrow and visit with the pre-K children and plant a tree. And they've got a famous bear from the forestry department that's going to come by and visit with them. So I'm not going to name any names.
Thank you.
Sure, awesome. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
You're good. There you go. Thank you so much. Thanks so much. Not to play an American chestnut.
Yeah.
And our second proclamation tonight is for the letter carriers food drive. And I think I'm going to ask the individuals to come forward at this time so we can recognize them. Stoney Carricoff, the president of the letter carriers of Staunton. Megan Vernon, the letter carrier food drive co-coordinator. Chris Icock, the managing director of development, Blue Ridge Area Food Bank. And Cindy Connors, the letter carrier food drive co-coordinator. And let me read this proclamation. City of Staunton, Virginia proclamation, letter carriers stamp out hunger food drive day, May 13th, 2023. Whereas every year on the second Saturday in May, letter carriers across the country collect non-perishable food as part of the nation's largest one-day food drive, distributing the donations to local food banks. And whereas the letter carriers stamp out hunger food drive is just one example of how letter carriers work to make a difference in the lives of those they serve. Since the pilot drive was held in 1991, more than 1.85 billion pounds of food have been collected. And whereas we recognize all letter carriers for their hard work and their commitment to their communities, all the food collected in our community stays in our community, and we support carriers' efforts to help those in need of our community. And whereas we also recognize the noteworthy milestone of 31 years that the National Letter Carrier Food Drive celebrates in 2023. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by Staunton City Council that May 13th, 2023 is hereby designated as Letter Carriers Stamp Out Hunger Food Drive Day in the city of Staunton, and we encourage the citizens of our community to support the Letter Carriers Stamp Out Hunger Food Drive by placing non-perishable food items in or near your mailbox on the morning of Food Drive Day. Your letter carrier and volunteers will pick up your donation, and together we can all help to feed our hungry. Adopted this 27th day of April, 2023. Stephen W. Claffey, Mayor. Thank y'all. Who's going first?
Tony's going first.
Not everybody at once.
Yeah. Volunteers, step right up.
Thank you, sir. So I'm new to this position. I just got voted in a couple of months ago, actually. So this will be my first time handling anything like this. It's a great honor to receive this this award from you guys. We're looking very forward to this drive, just like every year. It means a lot to us, a lot to the communities, and I mean the community is our lifeline. It's who we work for. So we appreciate this very much. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your service.
I want to thank everybody before we do it. This is one of the biggest things we do, and it helps out so many people in our community. And I know a couple years ago when COVID hit, we couldn't do it, and there were so many people that it really affected. Some still struggling with it now. We work for all of our customers. That's why we're here. And whether you're on our routes or on someone else's, we really appreciate it, and we do it all for y'all. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And on behalf of the food bank, I just want to thank Stoney and Megan and all of the letter carriers here in town, and Cindy for all you do for us. This is a tremendous day that's going to help so many people in our community. And working at the food bank, I've seen firsthand the worry go away from people when they walk in, not knowing where their next meal is going to come from. And food that's donated from this food drive takes that worry away from them. So it really means the world to us and to all of our guests that come to the food bank every day. So thank you all for this.
Thank you.
Thank you for this proclamation, very much appreciated. I'm a retired carrier. These folks are going to do the lion's share of the work, but I'm in charge of recruiting volunteers, and we can't do it without them either. We have volunteers that come work on the dock that day, and there'll be some volunteers going to take some of the burden off the carriers. As you know, they've been working extra long hours and multiple, extra days and massive overtime. So it's going to be a team effort, and without that, we couldn't do it. So thank you.
Thank you. Picture time.
Can't forget that.
Whole group.
Stand up. Can we stand up here? You think?
Stand right here that way.
All right, now look at me. Not you, Siri. All right, great, thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you guys. Thank you all.
All right, that brings us to the mayor's report, and then I think I'm going to pass tonight and turn it to the vice mayor, who says she had a few things she wanted to bring up. So
I do. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Darby.
I just wanted to let everyone know that last week I attended the Central Shenandoah Planning District Commission meeting. It's always a good opportunity to learn about the work being done in our region by the PDC. And two Staunton projects that were mentioned include the Pump Street and A Street housing developments. And also Mrs. Sharon Angle, who many of us know, is our Staunton representative, and she was elected by the commission members to serve on the executive committee. So we're glad about that. And then the other thing, a couple other things. Youth Fishing Derby is coming up next weekend at Lake Tams. So if you are so inclined, please go out to Lake Tams Saturday morning and support that. The golf shop at Gypsy Hill Park has reopened this week after the storm damage repairs. And I'm being told that they will have a full reopening in about 2 weeks. And then also I noticed that this is a new thing, but it sounds fun. There's going to be a Battle of the First Responders kickball tournament. And that's going to take place on May the 7th. Maybe some of our sheriffs back there in the, I'll know, what's that's all about. It's going to be at the Kiwanis Ball Field at Gypsy Hill Park. I don't know the time yet, so that hasn't been announced, but sounds like it would be definitely a sight to see. And then the last thing, and many of you may be aware of this, but as we move into the month of May and graduation is upon us for many high school students, college students, I think it's important for us to mention and take a moment to recognize some of our high school seniors. The Staunton High School class of 2023 has 10 student athletes who will be continuing their athletic careers at the collegiate level. And that is truly amazing to have that many young people be able to continue to compete at that level. And so if you haven't seen some of the great articles the news leader has provided, go check those out. But I wanted to mention the young folks that are involved, and that is Caden Jackson is going to play football at Averett University. Aurora Schwarner is going to do track and field at William & Mary. Augustine Miguel is going to do football at Bridgewater College. Kristen Parr is going to do equestrian at Lynchburg College. Malai Cabell is going to participate in track and field at Virginia Tech. Reese Levin is going to do football at Shenandoah University. Emma Shuey is going to do soccer at Virginia Wesleyan. Job Harrell is going to play baseball at Lehigh Carbon Community College. Alex Snell is going to play soccer at Christopher Newport University. And Walker Darby is going to play football at Averett University. So if you see these young folks, just take a minute and congratulate them and wish them well. It's a good thing for our city. And that's all I have to say.
Well, thank you. Do we have additional items by other members of council?
Mayor
Council.
Claffey, I'd like to
Hmm.
let everybody know that yesterday we lost Ray Robertson, who'd been our Commonwealth attorney for, seems like forever, but his funeral will be at St. Francis on Wednesday and of next week. And I've worked with Ray, and a lot of you have, and was a great guy.
Mhm.
And you really just, more of a prayer go out for his family.
Thank you.
Thank you, Terry.
Additional items.
Yeah, I've got one.
Councilor Robertson.
All right. This came to actually all of our attention yesterday, I believe, actually today. And I felt like it would be a good idea to read this so that we would get the information out. Just because of what was said at the last meeting. I would like to address the comments made by a former school board member at the last meeting about the city owing $1.8 million to the schools. Below is some history provided on this topic. This notion is based on the new funding formula using fiscal year 2020 as the base year. If you were to apply the funding formula to fiscal year 2021, fiscal year 2022, and fiscal year 2023, and then compare it to the city's actual allocation to education, then their perceived shortfall in local school funding is approximately $4 million. I also want to note that during that time, the school's unreserved fund balance grew from $1.734001 million in fiscal year 2019 to $5,858,745 in fiscal year 2022. This growth is directly due to unspent revenues from the city that went unspent in fiscal year 2020, 2021, and 2022 that the schools were allowed to retain. The city, however, has allocated additional funds to the schools over the last few fiscal years to make up for this shortfall. The first of which was $1.6 million of the city's first round of pandemic relief funding. This was received and spent by the schools in fiscal year 2021 for wireless access points, iPads and carrying cases, technology equipment, cleaning supplies, personal protective equipment, touchless faucets, mobile hotspots, and various other items. Many other localities did not allocate their city funds to their school divisions. Staunton did, because at that time there was no school pandemic relief funds identified by the state and the federal government. The city also allocated $2.5 million of our fiscal year 2021 carryover to schools for their Shelburne renovation, since revenues had come in higher than what was budgeted when their fiscal year 2022 allocation was set. These two items together total $4.1 million. The funding formula will be implemented for fiscal year 2024 and is based on actual audited data and not budgeted amounts. So going forward, this should not be an issue. The disconnect may be coming from schools not recognizing the city contribution of 1.6 million from our pandemic funding in fiscal year 2021 as offsetting the $4 million shortfall. It was not identified in this way at that time. Thank you for listening.
Additional items from counselors?
Yeah, Mayor Claffey.
Certainly.
Thank you. I'd like to give a shout out to all the organizers and participants who made Earth Day such a special day here in Staunton at Gypsy Hill Park Gym because of the rain. On Saturday, it was just packed with people educating citizens, a lot of children running around, learning a lot about the earth, the environment, a lot of people carrying around free plants, a lot of giveaways. So it was just a great atmosphere. We had Chris from Public Works was there with a 96-gallon trash can, educating folks on the new trash can, and a lot more education is going to be coming about that. So clearly a lot of work went into that and people really, really enjoyed it. I had a great time there. I also want to give a shout out to Frank Strassler. Many of you know Frank Strassler, and he did a fabulous presentation. What was that? Tuesday night. And Councilmember Arrowood was there. And we learned an incredible amount of information about architecture in the West End, history of the West End, different businesses in the West End. And then also he pointed out just some terrific ways that the West End could be revitalized through just taking buildings back to their original architecture, you know, how just changing the roads, putting, you know, a lot of information. But I just really wanted to say what a great job that they did. This the Staunton West End Business Alliance put that on.
No one can get excited about the mortar in between stones and a wall like Frank.
That's true.
It was a great presentation. It was so interesting to learn about all the different periods and styles of houses, you know, housing there, and the businesses in the West End as well, and the history of it. Just so cool. So many things to you know. I need to do some long walks out there. I'll borrow someone's dog. But yeah, it was just a great presentation. And if yeah, I think he said he was going to make it available on the historic preservation
On his website.
On the
yeah.
website, yeah, for that too. I'd really recommend that. And that was
Yeah,
that
the
was great.
Historic Preservation website.
All right. Thank everybody for their items. Anybody else have anything else? All right, we'll go on to the approval of minutes, and let's start out by taking on the budget work session of April 6, 2023. Do we have a motion to approve?
Mayor Claffey, I move to approve the budget session agenda as presented,
Minutes.
minutes as presented.
Thank you. Motion has been made. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Kester.
Ms. Woods,
Aye.
Mr. Holmes,
Aye.
Ms. Edwards,
Aye.
Mr. Arrowood,
Aye.
Mr. Robertson,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Darby,
Aye.
Mayor Claffey.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Now we have approval of the minutes of the work session and regular meeting of April 13th, 2023. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the work session agenda and the regular meeting minutes as printed.
Motion has been made. Is there a second?
A second.
Counselor Woods, second. Mr. Kester.
Mr. Holmes,
Aye.
Ms. Edwards,
Aye.
Mr. Arrowood,
Aye.
Ms. Woods,
Aye.
Mr. Robertson,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Darby,
Aye.
Mayor Claffey.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right. So now we're at the regular meeting, and let me just briefly point out that we have revised the agenda slightly for those that are following and have gotten a paper copy. Item A will be first. The item that is currently item C will be item B, which is the consideration of the resolution considering adopting the opioid abatement. The third item will be consideration of memorandum of understanding for the regional radio project. The fourth item of business tonight will be the consideration of the ordinance to establish the budget for fiscal year 2024. And the fifth item, which was added, that came off the work session, will be work session number 5. And how do you have that address? And that's a discussion of location for the City of Staunton Juvenile and Domestic Relations District Court Facility. At this point, Ms. Beauregard,
And I'll let John Blair handle this first item.
which is listed as a public hearing and consideration of resolution authorizing a land exchange between the City of Staunton and the Commonwealth of Virginia Department of Military Affairs. Blair.
Good evening, Mayor Claffey and members of council. Before you for your consideration tonight, in 1955, the Virginia Department of Military Affairs acquired the parcel of land on which the Armory and where the National Guard unit is located in Staunton over at Gypsy Hill Park. Again, that was in 1955, and through nearly 70 years of usage, both entities have used and have encroached upon the city, some on the Department of Military Affairs property. The Department of Military Affairs has used and at times had encroachments on the city's property. The Department of Military Affairs approached the city about the transaction proposed before you. Effectively, that transaction is a boundary adjustment in which the city would grant the Department of Military Affairs approximately 1.1 acres, and the Department of Military Affairs would grant the city approximately 1.1 acres. It's about even. I think there's maybe a few hundredths of an acre difference in the parcels that'll be swapped, but that would be through a quitclaim deed. There's also a deed of easement for your consideration, and that would give the city an easement. There's an existing water line. This would confirm that easement. There's another water line for our reserve that goes through the southeastern portion of the property. There's also a pedestrian and automobile access way that would also be granted. An easement would be granted to the city that connects 116th Regimental Unit Road with Deaver Road. Before you use a resolution that accomplishes the quitclaim deed as well as the deed of easement if you approve it.
Do members of council have any questions of Mr. Blair?
Mr. Blair, before your time, I thought we swapped some property over there by the Armory. We exchanged some property, or maybe is this the same property that we could be talking about?
I know that this has been considered for years. I don't know if it's the same property, if there was something done before I got here, but I do know that this transaction has been contemplated for years.
I noticed that the existing line for the existing border runs right through the picnic
It does.
table setup. And this is going to correct that.
Right.
And I know we have easement to the from NL Deaver Drive down to Regiment Drive. But there is a parking lot between the golf course and the easement road that is oftentimes used as an overflow lot for the golf course. Is that going to still be available?
Yes, that will be available.
Very good. Very good. Any other questions? Well, we're going to have a public hearing on this, so let me open up the public hearing. It is a time the council sets aside to hear from citizens and others about a specific topic, in this case, the land exchange. We ask that you please come to the podium and give your name, your address, and keep your remarks at 5 minutes or less. When you reach the 5-minute time limit, I will let you know that your time has expired. For our Zoom participants, please raise your hand now if you wish to speak on this particular public hearing. If you raise your hand during this public hearing, you will be able to raise your hand again during the council meeting for other matters from the public tonight. Once again, everyone who wishes to speak will be given an opportunity to come to the podium, and then I will close the public hearing. I will now open the public hearing. If you wish to speak, please approach the podium. Would anyone like to speak on the land swap exchange between the city of Staunton and the Commonwealth of Virginia? Mr. Kesker, do we have anybody on Zoom?
No, sir, we do not.
I will now close the public hearing. That was easy.
That was easy.
Do we have a motion?
Mayor Claffey,
Counselor Holmes.
I move that city council adopt the proposed resolution authorizing a boundary line adjustment between the tax map parcel ID number 9164 owned by the Commonwealth of Virginia Department of Military Affairs and the tax map parcel ID 9115 owned by the city of Staunton as pursuant to the terms of the proposed deed included as exhibits therein.
Thank you. There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you,
for Mayor.
Counselor Evans. Mr. Kesker.
Ms. Woods,
Aye.
Ms. Edwards,
Aye.
Mr. Robertson,
Aye.
Mr. Holmes,
Aye.
Mr. Arrowood,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Darby,
Aye.
Mayor Claffey.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you. That brings us to the next item is a consideration of resolution adopting the Virginia Opioid Abatement Authority Gold Standard Incentive. Ms. Beauregard.
Sure, I'll do a quick introduction and then I have Ginny Newman here, who's Director of Office on Youth, to discuss this further. Just to remind everybody, the Commonwealth of Virginia has initiated legal claims against various manufacturers and distributors of opioid pharmaceuticals. And City Council, Staunton City Council has since approved participation in several settlements, including one on November 11th, 2021, which was with one manufacturer and several distributors. And then again, as recently as March 9th, 2023. And what you have before you this evening is a resolution that the city will be able to can further commit by adopting what is called the Virginia Opioid Abatement Authority Gold Standard, which would mean that the city would be eligible for 25% more funding eligibility. And Ms. Newman is here tonight. We've been working very closely with Augusta County and the city of Waynesboro, and she's been helping facilitate that discussion. And so we asked her here this evening to talk a little bit more about the gold standard and what we have been doing so far and what some next steps will be. So,
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor and council members. Well, you took the first part of what I was going to say.
Sorry, I
Thank
didn't
you.
mean
No, awesome. I can just keep on moving then. So part of the Opioid Abatement Authority, it's, to be perfectly honest, it's new. It's a bit confusing and overwhelming. And the funds have already started to come in. So the funds are broken down. The state of Virginia, there's a 30% that's set aside for cities and counties. Those are direct disbursements. Portions of that have already started to come in. To receive the rest of it and to get the gold standard, one, the gold standard has to be adopted, which I'll talk a little bit about what that means. But also we have to put in a plan, and individual localities can submit a plan of how they're going to spend those funds. By agreeing to the gold standard, it will allow us to work closer with the OAA, the Opioid Abatement Authority. It will also allow us not only to get their guidance, but to use their data collection and not have to report directly to each of those separate settlements. There have been 4 settlements already to come in, 5, excuse me now. The 5th settlement, we've only heard about 1 year's worth. All of the settlements are broken down across 15 years, but some of them are only coming in for 3 years, 5 years. Some of them are broken out for the whole 15 years. Again, by working with the OAA, it's going to simplify some of the reporting. We won't have to report back directly to those individual companies. We'll also be able to follow their standards and a utilization of the funds. What I have found so far working with Augusta, Staunton, and Waynesboro, and the OAA is that the OAA is very responsive. And the 3 localities are all on board for discussions of utilizing some of the funds in combination towards programs and services in the area to maximize what we could get, what we could receive. As an incentive, for the gold standard, you will receive an extra 25%. So that's always good, more money coming in to help with that. There are 9 core abatement strategies that are shown to be evidence-based. They are following something out of Johns Hopkins, and this is all on the Virginia OAA website if anybody would like to look into it further. But to encourage localities to follow these strategies, I'm going to touch on each one just briefly so you have an idea of what we can do with some of this money by adopting the gold standard. The first is to broaden access to naloxone. So that's the purchase of it as well as training. We already have training in this area that is very good through the CSB and the Department of Health, but this would be to expand that training. So naloxone could be in all of the schools. We could make sure that everyone that needs it in the community has access to it. We can do that across 15 years. We can increase the use of medications to treat opioid disorders. Augusta Health, the Community Services Board, and other methadone clinics are actually in the area. We don't know exactly yet what all those services are doing. There is no supplanting. We would have to expand some of those services, but often people see that medication like a methadone is replacing one drug for another. It is not. It is stopping the chaos of addiction and allows an individual to live without those addictive cravings. So again, evidence-based programming, and it's all outlined. So we could look at each of these ideas as they come in and see if some of the funding could go towards expanding those programs. Provide treatment and supports during pregnancy and postpartum period, and services for neonatal opioid withdrawal syndrome. In the past 10 years, 44 babies have been born in the city of Staunton addicted to drugs. 239 over the past 10 years have been considered substance-exposed infants. So that's a pretty high number over 10 years. If you think about it, those children born 10 years ago are now receiving additional services in our area. That drug addiction doesn't just leave their system. So expanding those services, Augusta Health has had services and they're developing new ones. Community Services Board has had services in the past. We could restart those services and or expand them to bring those numbers down. You can fund a warm hands-off program and recovery services. I didn't know much about this until I looked into it. Basically, the most vulnerable groups in our population who use drugs, those who have a co-occurring disorder with a behavioral health disorder, very frequent. Those that have criminal justice involvement, are pregnant or postpartum, and those with housing insecurity. There's some studies that show that substance abuse is prevalent among the homeless population, and that can exceed more than 50%. So again, this can give money to programs that are directly working with our most vulnerable populations in the area. Improve treatments in jails and prisons and enrich prevention strategies. My favorite underneath here, coming from the Office on Youth, is a juvenile drug court. We do not have that in this area. It has been discussed. We could start a program and continue to fund it, not across the 15 years possibly with this funding, but with additional funding, and continue to expand it through to the Department of Juvenile Justice. We can also look at the reentry programs already being offered through Middle River Regional Jail, the CSB, and Augusta Health. We have some really good programs in place, but we could expand on those programs using these funds. Persons with a substance use disorder are 129 times more likely to OD within days after leaving jail. So getting those services, making sure that they carry on in the reentry and into the programs, into the community. Prevention strategies also mean education. I'm all about a giant media campaign in the area for parents and students, education, expanding the education in the schools. Vaping is a huge problem in our schools right now. The students are not just vaping nicotine, they're also vaping marijuana. And of course, they're obtaining all of this illegally. And last thing we want is the front page of our paper to show that a student received a marijuana vape cartridge that is laced with fentanyl. It would be tragic. So these types of things can be worked on. A harm reduction program. The Department of Health and Augusta Health, I've met with both of them, and they are discussing a harm reduction program as a possibility in our area. That includes peer-to-peer supports, trained community support. It's a needle and syringe exchange program, fentanyl strips, education about and testing for HIV and hepatitis C. People who are in harm reduction programs are five times more likely to get into treatment. And there's a 50% decrease in bloodborne diseases within the community. Now, do we have a high opioid problem in our area? A lot of people are telling me no, but we don't want a high opioid problem in our area either. But we do have opioids here. We do have problems here. And the funding, especially if it can be combined in some part over the next 15 years with the other two regions, we can maximize what we can do with the funds that are coming in. We also may be able to match some of those dollars to a larger project where we can apply for a competitive grant going forward. So there's a lot that we can do. Data collection and research are part of this as well. So we will have to continuously collect data. While the OAA gives us some things to collect now, it's basically numbers, but we would have to show that the programs that we're supporting are working in our community, that they are not just there. Does anybody have any questions about the OAA gold standard that I'm asking you to approve tonight?
Members of council.
Ms. Newman, I don't have any questions, but it certainly sounds like you have really planned this out well. It sounds like you're leveraging partners, leveraging grants, looking at all the things that can really maximize the money that we're going to get. And I think it sounds like you're wanting to be proactive. We're not having a huge opioid problem right now. And you're right, we don't want one. And so I appreciate all that you're doing.
Thank you.
Very much thank you for all your efforts. Anyone else?
I'll make a motion.
All right, Vice Mayor Darby.
Mayor Claffey, I move the City Council adopt the proposed resolution adopting the Virginia Opioid Abatement Authority Gold Standard incentive associated with the opioid settlement funds as presented.
Second that.
Motion has been made in second. Mr.
Question,
We have one question from Councilor Robertson.
Mr. Blair, can I, even though I am in favor of it, can I vote on this?
Yes, you may, because this is not directly related to the actual settlements. This is the distribution of the funds.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Sorry.
No problem. Glad to do it. Mr. Kester.
Mr. Arrowood,
Aye.
Mr. Holmes,
Aye.
Mr. Robertson,
Aye.
Ms. Woods,
Aye.
Ms. Edwards,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Darby,
Aye.
Mayor Claffey.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. All right, that brings us up to the consideration of memorandum of understanding for the regional P25 radio project. Ms. Berger.
Clerk Plowman, Chief Technology Officer and expert in the regional radio initiative is going to speak about this item this evening.
Thank you, ma'am.
Welcome, expert.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, and members of council. Before you tonight is a memorandum of understanding between Staunton, Augusta County, and Waynesboro for the regional P25 radio system. This outlines the governance of what we're expecting over the next 15 years with this project. Includes the oversight of how the project is going to get run, including a policy committee with one member from each one of the jurisdictions involved in that committee. It proclaims Staunton as the chair of the committee for the first 2 years on a rotating basis. So each jurisdiction will take 2 years as chair of the committee. It makes sense at this point, since Stanton's been involved since the beginning of it, to start with that process. It also lists Stanton as the fiscal agent. We've been involved in announcing or preparing and releasing the RFP. One entity kind of needs to take the lead in doing all that, and Stanton has certainly been the one to do that. Also, as fiscal agent, it would put Stanton responsible for all of the FCC licenses. Since this is a shared system, we'd go from each entity having their own licenses to one combined group of licenses, and that would put Stanton in charge of that. The MOU also outlines the cost allocations for this. There are components that are considered infrastructure. It's the stuff that's sitting on the radio towers that all the radios are going to work on, and it sets that allocation as a 22-56-22 between Staunton, Augusta County, and Waynesboro. We looked at several models, figured that was one of the most fair across the board, and everybody seems happy with that right now. It also addresses the cost allocation for the initial purchase of that infrastructure, as well as the ongoing maintenance, because we are looking at this as a 15-year project at a minimum. Each subscriber units, the radios that we're actually going to be using are going to be the responsibility of each one of the jurisdictions. So everybody has a different set of needs of radios and different types of radios. That's up to them to pick which radios within a selection to use, but the infrastructure costs are going to be shared. The MOU also has a buy-in option and exit options. So if we have other entities that ultimately want to join our consortium here, we would certainly consider that and welcome that moving forward. It also makes getting out of the project somewhat complicated, because this is a system that is intended to work together. The example I've been using is you can't make a cake and want your eggs back. So we try to make it pretty hard for everybody to stick with it, but ultimately it is going to benefit the region. The MOU, essentially the one that was in your packet last week, we've had some minor revisions this week as we've gone through approvals. Waynesboro did approve it Monday. Augusta County approved it last night. The revisions basically changed the quorum from 2 out of the 3 of us to 3 of us having to be involved in each meeting, which would certainly make sense since we all have a vested interest in what happens with this. It also added a second level of resolution. If the policy committee can't get together, we get to go to our city and county administrators to try to have them resolve it before we would go to arbitration, which certainly makes sense. When this MOU is completed, which we hope gets your approval this evening, we will actually start our final negotiations with L3 Harris, who is the recipient of the award. We hope to have that contract in the next 4 to 6 weeks so we can actually get moving along and actually building the project out. We would start a very detailed design and review process, which is, we spent a lot of time talking high levels with stuff. Engineers have certainly been involved. This is really where the rubber hits the road. We sit down and look at very specific things and make the final purchase, execute that agreement with them. And really, realistically, we'd hope to start construction late summer, early fall on this. We are looking at 18 to 24 months for implementation. It is a huge project. We're looking at 8 towers across the county. We're looking at well over 3,000 radios. So this is substantial. It changes the equipment that's in our dispatch centers. It changes the radios in cars, what's on the hips of our law enforcement and fire officials. It changes the stuff that's on the towers. So this is a lot of equipment.
Is that 8 additional towers or switching out equipment?
Switching out equipment. So we're using all the existing towers. We are adding equipment to a tower that's existing in grottos right now. We're moving some of the paging channels around to different places, but we are essentially reusing the towers that are there. But it also means we have to work around existing equipment that's being used and staging new equipment before we take the old stuff out. So we really have to have 2 radio systems operating for a period of time while we're testing and configuring the new system, which makes things really dicey in some of these shelters where you don't have a lot of space. But we are using existing radio towers.
Kurt?
Yes, sir.
I know I probably have asked this before, but will this help eliminate that dead area that's going down, but when you come down 11 and bypass and 11, where, because going like you're going to Verona down through there, it's dead.
We've got some significant dead spots in Staunton. This was definitely going to improve that. We have a 90% guaranteed coverage with mobile radio, or with portable radios, and 95% with mobiles throughout the county. One of the issues we are dealing with, though, is we are in Augusta County, and there's no way we're ever going to get 100% coverage. We did a lot of modeling before we even put the RFP out to try to get an idea of what we should expect. We have a consultant that is very well versed in engineering radio systems for public safety across the country. And we took the existing 8 tower sites. We actually went up to 14 or 15 and really can't get a whole lot better coverage. Just the northern part of around Mount Solon, the little area down around past Shenandoah, down to Vesuvius area, I mean, just some areas that there are hills and valleys, nooks and crannies. Even the Park Service can't get radio service in their own parks in the corners of the county. So it's going to be as good or better than what we have right now. Staunton is certainly going to have a lot of improvements. We are good, laid out plans for testing some of the larger structures. Staunton High School is really tough to get radio signal into. Lowe's, Walmart, those areas. We've got some mitigation plans in case the new system doesn't. We can actually put in repeaters to boost up those signals in those areas. So we really are hoping improving signal. The system we've got in right now was built in 2011 for Staunton. It was never intended to last this long. It has some shortcomings and some limitations. So we're really looking forward to getting the system put in as quickly as possible.
Thank you.
So if I was on Shark Tank, this is the point where I'd ask you for your commitment of money, but fortunately previous councils have already helped us get to this point. We've got $2 million worth of ARPA funding that has been committed, as well as $2 million out of the CIP. So I'm not coming tonight to ask you for money, which makes this process a whole lot easier. What I'm asking you is to authorize the city manager to execute the MOU so we can continue this project, which we feel is really valuable for first responders in the cities and county.
One question I have, you said that you were analyzing, what conditions would have to be met for someone else to join our network. And I assume you're going west of here.
We are building interconnects in with Rockingham, Rockbridge, Albemarle. We're putting in multi-band radios, which is really going to help out Waynesboro and Augusta County, who have may possibly work incidents up in Afton Mountain and potentially go over Albemarle. But since all of our neighboring jurisdictions are also L3 Harris systems, we can build those connections. Our own radio signals are going to go from most of Rockingham County all the way through Rockbridge.
Okay.
Again, there's little nooks and crannies and gaps, but realistically, we're going to have great coverage. But we're also going to have better interoperability, not only between other localities around us, but between us. Our firefighters are out in the county every single day. The county's in running calls here in Staunton. Law enforcement have to work together. Having everybody on one common system is really going to give us a lot of flexibility, which we patchwork together now, but we'll have a lot better capabilities.
Any other questions from councilors? I'll entertain a motion.
I move that city council authorize the city manager to execute the memorandum of understanding for the regional P25 radio project as presented.
Motion has been made. Is there a second?
A second.
Terry will second that.
Councilor Holmes is seconded. All right, Mr. Kester.
Mr. Airwood,
Aye.
Ms. Woods,
Aye.
Ms. Edwards,
Aye.
Mr. Holmes,
Aye.
Mr. Robertson,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Darby,
Aye.
Mayor Claffey.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Kurt, for all your work. All right, now we have the revised agenda here. And we're now a consideration of ordinance to establish a budget for fiscal year 2024, starting July 1st, 2023, running through June 30th, 2024. Ms. Beauregard.
Jesse Myers, Chief Finance Officer, will do a quick presentation, kind of recapping where we are. And then we'll have a discussion if you wish. Jesse, do you want me to run it for you?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Okay, so just to recap, we are currently at 87 cents on the real estate rate per $100 of assessed value. That's a general fund budget of 69,264,351. A total budget, this is city and schools, of 152,642,912. None of the other tax rates are changing at this point in time. And in addition, we have not proposed any new increases in our water rates, sewer rates, stormwater fees, parking fees, or environmental fees. I just want to point out a few things in this year's budget ordinance. The first one is the amount that I just read to you. The second is that this year we're doing a 100% appropriation. We have not done that in the last few years. We've been doing 75% and 25%. We feel like it's a good time to go back to 100%, but if the economy starts to go down, we'll revisit our budget at that time next year. It also establishes the rate of 87 cents in section 3. So I want to walk through the changes that have been made since the city manager proposed her budget. The real estate rate has been taken down from 89 cents to 87. That's a total decrease of 5 cents from the 23 rate. We have increased meals tax revenues to by 200,000, increased sales tax revenue by 124,500, increased lodging tax revenue by 100,000, and increased business license revenue by 150,000. On the expenditure side, the PDC have reduced their budget by 8,709. That's not a reduction that we put in. We reduced enterprise zone incentives by 10,000. And we did organizational wide operational reductions of 109,659. And these were spread across many different departments in the city. We have added a part-time permit technician position at 22,607. And then we are hoping to fund these one-time expenditures with FY23 carryover and have taken them out of this year's FY24 operation budget. That's wharf tree replacement for 30,000, the 911 EMD software for 65, 45,000 for the entrance corridor overlay, and the crossing marketing plan for 41,500. Another addition that we discussed last week is we took the rate from the 86 cents that we had gotten down to up to 87. That additional 287, 261 will be set aside as undesignated in the CIP fund to be designated later by council. That is where we're currently at.
Hey, questions from council?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make one more push here to a 0.89 rate would put us in the bottom quarter of localities in the state of Virginia in our real estate tax. It would also help us to fund projects that are not currently in our budget, things like West End projects, putting money aside for Uniontown study that's ongoing. We have nothing at all put in the budget for. Many other projects that we've all expressed interest in, but have not been able to find room for in this budget. This going from 87 to 89 would add less than $4 to the real estate taxes for the average priced home for the homeowner in Staunton. Median priced home. Thank you. So I would like us to consider that one last time before we lock this in.
And I'd like to piggyback on what Brad has just said, or Councilman Arrowood. I loved what Jesse had done to bring the budget down to 0.86. We had a very lively conversation, discussion, argument last week, which I think was healthy. But I am going to stick to my proposal that we keep the reductions that Ms. Moyers had made, but return to the 0.89 and continue with the 1 cent that I suggested last week, 1 cent to be set aside in CIP for library redesign after the study is done, 1 cent set aside for West End revitalization once their small area plan has been conducted, and 1 cent set aside for Uniontown after their small area study is completed. And I know, we all know that these are expenses that are coming down the road. These aren't, these aren't fairy tales. These are things that are going to need to be done. We're investing in these. These are things that are benefits to our community. I feel like we have talked about the West End ad nauseum, and it's really time to put our money where our mouth is. 1 cent is worth $287,261. That's not going to make enormous changes, but once we start setting money aside for something, number one, I think it gains the confidence of our residents. And I think that's extremely important, is to have residents see that we are committed, and money means commitment. The library is precious to so many residents in our city. It benefits every segment of society. And I see so many changes that need, it's not ADA accessible on all levels. The stacks are too high for people who use wheelchairs. In fact, the stacks present a danger to folks who are in the corners and find themselves alone. And perhaps in dangerous situations. We have mold potential in the basement. I think we need to be setting this aside. This is not a fairy tale. And Uniontown, again, we know that we are going to have to be doing something about it. And I don't think that taking a bond always is the best idea. I know we'll have to borrow money if we are committed to making these types of changes, but I feel like we won't have to borrow as much in the future as we will if we start putting some money aside. And I hope you all will consider my words. Again, I think it's an investment, and I like everyone to think of that word investment. And as Mr. Airwood stated, I got about $3.50 difference between 0.87 and 0.89 per month for a $216,000 home, which is the median assessed value of a home here in Staunton. And I know that I am very aware this is an increase, a monthly increase for everybody, myself included. Everybody in this room is going to see an increase, whether it's in their rent, whether it's in their mortgage payment. I'm also aware that some people pay yearly, and that will be a big chunk of change when it comes into their mailbox to pay. But I hope that people will take this seriously as an investment in our city.
Claffey.
Councilor Holmes.
I would like to piggyback on both what Brad and Michelle said. I think that we have so many things that we got coming down the line that need to be putting money back for. I mean, I don't like striking the money to market Staunton Crossing either. And the fact that we got to put $7.2 million worth of water tower and water lines in that land before we can even sell it, it doesn't make sense to not be putting this money back for things like that, and doing things for the West End and for Uniontown. I just don't think that I think we should be more proactive, than we are being. And we got other things that always seem to come up every year, and it would not hurt us to be a little bit ahead of the schedule as far as money coming in. I really do think that we should not reduce it beyond 89.
This would still put us as one of the lowest property tax communities in the state of Virginia.
But not in our locality. I mean, I think it's worth mentioning that Augusta County did not move last night, and the city of Waynesboro has dropped. So therefore, in the Staunton, Augusta, Waynesboro area, it puts us, we had a 28% increase in our assessed value on average for residential property. And of course, in Augusta County, they did not raise their assessment, and they left their tax rate at the same.
But Augusta County has twice the many people as we do, and they don't provide the services we do. And Waynesboro has a lot more money coming in from meals tax, sales tax, because the way they decided to develop.
And I think what you have to look at is you're putting all the burden on the city landowners.
The last time we had a big jump, we said 28% this time on it. The last big jump was 2007 when it jumped 35%. And city council dropped the rate from 95 cents per $100 to 90, which was a new low at the time.
Which is 5 cents.
Yes, a higher percentage increase and all the way down to 0.9.
And I'm 100% in favor of this last week's budgets session where we said, let's start putting some money into the CIP and put the penny back in to take it from 86 to 87. But you have to understand that is the city of Staunton is required to run a balanced budget. And we don't have a savings account. And we talk about savings, but the only thing we can really do is put it in the CIP.
But that's.
And
that
those
is-
are the line item
but
budgets that
that's
we.
So we can fund
fund.
things now, you know, at the way it is now, if we wait to put it into the end of the year, we can't fund anything until the end of the year when we know what we have. Whereas we can't be working on things now, which you know, it could put you back a whole year, you know, and you know.
I think Miss Jesse Owens is doing a much better job of keeping us abreast on our overages and our revenue stream throughout the year. I mean, this is something that it was never even looked at.
There's already been a decline in sales, meals and sales tax, you know, coming in at now. They've seen some reduction in those things, and we're basing a lot of our overage on those items, you know, and the economy is slowing down. I mean, it's just doing that. And
We had a $6.5 million overage last year, correct, Terry?
6.5, yes.
$6.5 million.
$6.5 million over.
And the other thing, you
Jesse,
know,
where's Jesse?
we have to realize
Oh, I can't. Was it 6.5 last year?
I believe so.
but didn't we
And
have
is
to
it
use?
gonna be 4.5 this year?
Yes, probably.
Terry, I'm
Higher, correct?
The year's not over, but yeah,
Correct.
it's trending that way.
Terry, I am all for putting money away in good times. I'm sorry, I do not look as what we're going through right now. And I heard today that the Fed's probably going to bump it up again, probably another 0.5 percentage basis point. You know, it's basically possibly putting this economy into a recession. And that's, like I said last week, I mean, we are asking so much of our citizens, especially our poor citizens. We're blessed up here. We can afford what this budget is doing to us. But there's a lot of people that can't. And if they go to the grocery store, look what they're having to shell out for that. Look what the gas has gone back up again. Just they're getting hit one time after another. When times are good, yes, I'm all for putting some money away.
Well, I'm not even talking about putting money away, but I think the money should be going in the CIP now to do jobs that need to be done now and not wait a whole year and then see what we got left over and put the money in then, you know. And didn't we use some of the money that we, whatever, the 4 million it was last year, didn't that end up being spent to pay for the jail prisoners and stuff like that? Didn't we lose some of that money that way?
For the carryover?
Yeah.
No, I don't believe so. We did use $1 million to help support the Gardner Springs project that came in over budget. So I was very thankful that we had that for that project because that was important to us. Then we funded our CIP, I believe. We set aside $500,000 to help with the storm damage. We're hoping to get FEMA support on that, but we still have not heard. And it's near the end of April, so can't really count on that. We used some of it to fund the negative contingency that was built into the FY23 budget. Those are the main things I remember. Do you remember anything else?
I think those are the main ones.
Yeah.
The CIP has been funded every year except for the COVID year.
At the end of the year instead of the beginning of the year.
Jesse, can you remind everybody how the tax rate is tied in with the school funding?
Property taxes play a very heavy role in the school funding. They had chosen to back out meals and sales tax because they wanted a number they could depend on. So a penny in this budget in their FY 25 formula is worth $55,500.
What do we figure at 80, at the 86 that was proposed? It was a total of what,
150, I thought.
160.
165.
Like 167, 500 or something like that.
And so that money would have to be found somewhere else to.
Well,
or-
that would just be additional money they're going to get. I'm kind of projecting that with the 86 or 87 cents, their contribution would go up almost 7%. So any additional penny would give them $55,500 in their FY 25 contribution.
And also, aren't we losing some money due to the jail? The 600 and
670,000.
that's coming in 20.
That's coming at us. We still have it for FY 24 and 25. FY 26 will be the first year without the Harrisonburg Rockingham jail buy-in. And that's
that'll make our-
about 670,000.
So that'd be
make our-
2026.
that'll make our-
2026.
That'll make our rate about like 13 something a year for just the jail. And that doesn't include prisoners, which we pay quite a bit more for, right?
That will, I think it's about 3.2 million that we pay the jail. So we'll be losing that revenue from Harrisonburg, Rockingham County of 670,000 each year that they used to buy into the jail. I believe it was 10 years ago.
So as our discussion on last week budget session, I know I had already proposed the 87 cents, but as I continue to ponder that 87 cents, I thought about what I ran on. So what I ran on, as Mayor Claffey proposed that day in the last week budget session, what he ran on. And I understand my area of focuses are fully funding the schools, affordable housing, mental health, substance use resources, Stanton Crossing, diversity and inclusiveness, Middle River Regional Jail, and West End revitalization. And I ran on those things because I want to make sure that those areas were getting the fundings they need. As I looked over the budget and came back, that means that some of them fundings that will go to these areas will not be able to because of the difference in lowering it down to 87. So I propose to go back up to 89.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion. I move to adopt an ordinance establishing and approving a budget for the city of Staunton for fiscal year 2024, totaling 152.
Earlwood, I
sorry.
have a revised motion.
Thank
We
you.
came over prepared tonight, so.
Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt an ordinance establishing and approving a budget for the city of Staunton for fiscal year 2024, totaling $153,791,956, with a real estate tax rate in section 3.1 of the FY 2024 budget ordinance at 89 cents per $100 of assessed value.
A motion is on the floor. Is there a second?
I second.
Any further discussion? I personally will not be voting for this. I think this is the wrong way to go. I think
Not
we're
this year.
making a mistake. If you want to put it in the CIP, put it in the CIP. The CIP comes up first thing on the budget session every year. And we can fund it. We have never not funded the CIP except for the COVID year, as far as I'm concerned. And I believe most of that was funded the next year. But not 100%. But the way to save money in this system is through the CIP. And there is no way of saving money, because you are forcing the citizens of Staunton, Virginia to pay their tax bill in this coming May. And you are not spending their money. You're basically
putting money away to pay for water lines and a water tank and in Staunton Crossing to do water line and sewer possibly in Uniontown.
Possibly. When has this city ever put money in and put it there and then said, we're going to save it for a later date? You've spent it every year.
it's spent, folks.
No, we
It's
have
Where's
spent.
the 6 million, Terry? It's all been used on projects.
It goes.
It goes.
Every
That's how
dime
you do your
goes.
projects. We decide which projects. want
Ms.
to get
Beauregard,
funded.
I believe you told us last time that we could revisit the CIP in the fall.
Correct. So we'll be bringing the capital budget back to city council. We start the CIP first. We do start that process in the late summer, early fall. And so once we understand better where the carryover is going to land, we'll bring the capital budget back to you all to revisit the plan in its entirety. So.
And at
that's
that point,
correct.
if we felt there were necessary projects that felt we needed to fund, we
Sure.
could add them back in.
Yeah, correct. Yep.
And that would be the same process, even if the tax rate, if we continue
have
to
to get-
compromise at 87 cents.
Correct. We would
It
still
would
do
still
that.
be the same thing.
It would be the exact same
And we
thing.
would know what the overage was going to be. And then we could identify any other projects or pay for the capital improvement plan twice over.
We keep
But
putting.
now we're going to put it on the back of the taxpayer.
Yeah, just remember, you always harped on us. You are trying to represent all of the citizens of Staunton,
I think I am
But we are
representing all
trying-
this. I think
but we
we
are
are.
really-
from
we
the
are.
poorest
We
to
are.
the greatest.
Because
and
it's-
we're doing
we-
that
We're
with a-
divided. We always going to be
I know
divided.
that. I know
We're
that.
always
I'm
gonna be
just
divided.
disappointed that
I understand,
I-
but we always going to be divided. It's
We
not
can-
going to be a happy medium, but we can always
well, we thought we
revisit.
had reached a
We
happy
can,
medium.
we can always
89 was
revisit.
the happy medium.
We can always revisit next year, the year after. We don't know how the economy is going to go. You said it yourself. You keep saying that the economy is not, so we can't budget that on those dollars. We can't do that on those dollars.
We could proudly say we
So we
found
have
a-
people,
wait,
we
sorry.
have our citizens saying that half wants it 89, half want it lower. It's divided. So either way you go, it's not gonna be a happy medium.
If half wanted it 89 and half wanted it lower, you go to 87, you got a little bit lower.
I don't think what we're asking for is outrageous. I think staying at 92 would have been outrageous. And I think that we would have gotten pushback from just about.
I think you will
everybody.
get pushed back
If
on
you-
87.
If
but
you
I
had
mean,
stayed at
89.
92, admit
Yeah.
that would have been a 28% average increase.
Mhm.
At 89, what
Mhm.
percent do you think it is?
I'm sorry, Steve, can you say that?
We had stayed at 92% tax rate. Real estate. That would have been a 28% increase for everybody's real estate tax,
Across the board.
correct? At 89, what is that?
I don't know, Steve.
Do you happen to have that number,
Actually,
Steve?
No.
I had it figured at 22%. I'm saying you're raising every single one of these people's taxes.
Steve,
by
everybody's
20.
assessments went up and everything costs more. And everything in the city is costing more. And I'm looking at the numbers that we will all be paying more. And people who own homes that are not as expensive will pay less. Those of us who own homes that are more expensive will pay more.
Correct.
I feel like it will be more equally distributed that way because you're paying according to what the assessed value of your home is.
We can
So-
also,
And if, I'm sorry, but Mr. Haney gave us the average, I'm sorry,
Medium.
the 41% of people living in homes that are less than $200,000 a year. An increase is going to be minimal, but it will be a big investment into our city. So, I mean, we're not going to agree on this and, we're not going to change each other's minds. I think we've had a really healthy discussion and exchange. And I appreciate what everybody up here has said. And we're disagreeing on what a CIP is and what projects might be worked on. And Mark, I hope that money that we agree to earmark for certain things, as the 3 things that I mentioned earlier, will be used for that. And as I said last week, I'm going to be here at least 4 years, and I'm pledging to make those 3 things a priority. I don't, I'm not saying anything outrageous like putting in another fountain at Gypsy Hill Park or something. I mean, these are things that we're all committed to doing, to making our city better.
We can also proudly say that 0.89 is a new low for the city, a new low for real estate tax assessment for that. And yes, it was in the year of an increase. We were able to drop it to a lower number than it ever has been on that, and putting us squarely in the bottom 25% of localities in the state. So the idea that anyone's not going to move here because of the tax rate, I think people would move here for the tax rate if that's actually how they were choosing, since we are very low.
The things that usually make an area is the quality of life, the schools, and those are things that we invest in a lot, and I know all of us really care about the town. I ain't no doubt about that, but we all, we disagree on some of the ways to get where we want to go. And I don't want to raise anybody's taxes, but I also want to make sure that we have the money to do the things we have to do.
And
Well, you're
most
going to.
citizens, when talking to them, the ones that you don't hear that come here saying lower it or raise it, they understand. So that's why I had a change. Also, besides what I ran on to make sure those things are funded, is because they know that they don't want to pay a higher rate, but they understand why. They understand why. Because this is what it takes to run the city. It takes finances. It takes the funding to run a city. We're coming down the pipe with courthouses. We're coming down the pipe with funding the courthouse to put the employees in there. We cut out employees, not hiring anymore. West End,
Water tunnel from the reservoir.
Uniontown.
And
I can agree with Michelle, library. These are all things that need to be funded, and I understand you're saying it's coming off the backs of the people, but how else do you fund the city that you live in?
Further discussion? Colin?
I'm not supporting 89 cents. I'll be voting against it. I think that I look at this as an opportunity for Staunton to lower the rate to what was a compromised agreement at 87 cents and be able to provide excellent services, be able to accomplish the things that we want to see fit in the CIP. I also think that based on the projections that our CFO is telling us, that as always, we are going to have the money, unless it all bottoms out between now and June the 30th, the projections are good, that we're going to come back with $4.5+ million over what we've budgeted for. And to me, this is an opportunity to do right by our citizens and to be able to lower it, the tax rate, to give them some adequate relief. So I am, I'm not in agreement with the 89 cents. I think that the things that are important in the CIP, we will be able to fund. It's not like we're going to put that money away and just let it sit there. We're going to be able to fund it. And
if we do
those
come-
are important.
If we do come
And
back over, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, I mean, I think that we'll work through that as we move forward. But I also think that, it's unfortunate that, when we left here, we had all, we had come to a compromise,
But
and
we hadn't- but
obviously.
we hadn't.
No, we
Well,
had
you
not.
all,
You agreed to.
everybody sat up here and said,
I did
we'll go
not.
with 89 cents, 87 cents.
I did
No,
not.
I did
we
not
did
either.
No.
All right, that's fine.
But
Yeah,
no, honestly, I know,
yeah.
I'm serious. I'm sorry if you thought that, but no, that didn't
I
happen.
did not. go
Okay,
that
that's fine.
I'm sorry you thought that. That was a
Well,
confusion
even
then.
if we do have $4 million over, that's money that we could tie to the juvenile court, and that could keep us from borrowing. We're gonna borrow 10 million probably for the court, but we're gonna pay back 20 million because of the tax rate or the interest rate, you know? So if we could shave a couple of million off of that, we could save some more money there. You know, but that's money that we're gonna have to shell out. We can't get around that. We've got to build or come across something to use for our juvenile court. And we all know it's gonna be at least 10 to 12, maybe more million. And if we don't do anything else but put it towards that, it would save us some money.
That's a good segue into the next item.
Good segue to get on with this vote. Cast your vote and put it down in the future.
Mr. Kesker.
Did we get a second?
We
I
did.
did give it a second. A while ago.
Mr. Arrowood,
Aye.
Mr. Holmes,
Aye.
Mr. Robertson,
No.
Ms. Edwards,
Aye.
Ms. Woods,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Darby,
No.
Mayor Claffey.
No.
Motion carries.
Can I get a point of clarification on what you would like to do with the extra 2 cents? Last week, we had decided to put that penny in undesignated. Is the wish still to put the 3 cents in undesignated or split it the 3 ways like Michelle had discussed?
We were gonna split it the 3 ways like Michelle discussed.
All right, thank you.
We did not. I'm sorry you thought, I'm sorry that.
Okay, let's bring up item E, which is coming from the work session, and that was a discussion of location for the city of Staunton Juvenile and Domestic Relations District Court Facility. This item was brought up by Vice Mayor Dodd.
Yes. I wanted to bring this item up because obviously the Hardy lot as a possible location for our Staunton Juvenile and Domestic Relations Court has not been something that I think our citizens are pleased with. Not something that I've been pleased with. I thought that we needed to talk about it more. And so I will just cut to the chase. And I want to make a motion that Staunton City Council direct staff to locate an alternative site to the Hardy lot for the location of Staunton Juvenile and Domestic Relations District Court.
I second that.
Second.
I'll second as well.
Fourth.
Yeah.
It's always something we can agree on.
Mr. Blair, do we have? You have something you want to say on that?
No, sir.
Okay.
All right. Motion has been made and second. Any further discussion? Mr. Kester.
I just want to clarify, who had the second?
I think it was,
Quick draw.
I'll
Terry
take it.
over
I'll
there.
take it. I'll take the second.
Mr. Arrowood,
Aye.
Ms. Edwards,
Aye.
Ms. Woods,
Aye.
Mr. Robertson,
Aye.
Mr. Holmes,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Darby,
Aye.
Mayor Claffey.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, that brings us to matters from the city manager.
Thank you. Two of my items are repeats, but they're very important, so I need to repeat them. Vice Mayor Darby brought up the fishing derby earlier tonight, and that is the reason the recycling center will be closed on May 6th and May 20th for fishing derbies happening on each of those weekends. However, the center will be open extra late from 9 to 7 p.m. on Thursday, May 4th and May 18th. And we've been pushing this out on social media, and if you've been by the center, you've probably seen the signs going up to remind users of the closings on those Saturdays. Next, at our next meeting, May 11th, city council meetings will start 30 minutes earlier at 7 p.m. Work sessions would still start as early as 5 in most cases. And so just to remind you, starting in 2 weeks, regular meetings start at 7. Finally, the city completed migration of our new phone system for cities and schools this past week. And information technology, along with our vendor, deployed over 600 phones and the core telephone servers, replacing our 15-year-old telephone system. We're looking at savings of over $2,000 a month in telecommunications charges with the elimination and streamlining of circuits as well. And if you called the city this week and you accidentally got dropped, we apologize. We're all still figuring it out. So bear with us, but it's going to be a great new system that will save us some money. So we're very happy with that. And that's all I have this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that brings us to matters from the public. This part of City Council's agenda is entitled Matters from the Public. It is a time that council sets aside to hear from citizens and others about a wide variety of subjects. A copy of the Staunton City Council's Matters from the Public rules are available in paper form at the clerk's desk and online at the City of Staunton's webpage. You are asked to familiarize yourself with those rules before commenting. Please come to the podium or begin your call, identify yourself, and complete your remarks within 5 minutes. Matters from the public is open. Is anyone willing to speak?
Good evening, Joanne Tigert, 913 North Augusta Street. First of all, as a retired teacher, I'm used to dealing with people who don't get along. And this is the first time y'all have done that. Sorry, but y'all have been doing really well together and I commend you for that. But any group of people, young or old, are going to have times when you don't agree. That's just life. So get over yourselves, all of you, and now you can get along again. Secondly, I don't want to pay a huge property tax bill either, but I'm willing to do it because the library needs work. The library is getting a new roof. That's great. It's not a big trash can in the corner, but there are mold issues. There are accessibility issues, and our library is something that everybody loves. You know that when people move to Staunton, one of the first things they do is go to the library and get a library card. Even in this date of 2023, people still go to the library right away and say, I want to get my library card. And they meet people there and they come and they volunteer with the Friends of the Library. I'm on the board. I'm getting off soon. I've been on there too long. But you know, it's just a place where people meet and they have active programs for everybody from children to old people. They've got so much going on and they've got things online. They've got so much. It's amazing. And our library needs a new roof. It needs a lot more. It would, in my wildest dreams, it would need a new location where you don't have all the issues that that building has, but that's in Dreamville. But anyway, I want to speak up to the library, speak up with everybody's gonna have a problem, but get over yourselves, get along. And yes, I'm willing to pay 89 cents per $100 of value, even though it will hurt, but I can be a big girl and do it. Thank you.
Good evening. Ophi Kyer, 301 Yunt Avenue, Staunton, Virginia. I too want to thank you for having the courage to look into the future for the city of Staunton and not just down over the next couple of months. I'm here for two reasons tonight. And the one is to say that my tax assessment, when the bill came in, I freaked out. However, I believe that the funds are needed to make my city what I like to live in. And I would never sell my house for what it's assessed for. It's worth a lot more. So I also appreciate the assessor giving me a really good value on my home. You talked about where to go with these funds. I have it for you tonight. Pass those out. I'm here to talk about Uniontown again. And Building Bridges for the Greater Good is holding their annual event that which we bring citizens to the table to talk about issues. This year, we're doing What We Lost Part 2. And Part 2 is going to be Uniontown. Uniontown was annexed 75 years ago, and nothing has been done in it since. It's been 60 plus years since it was rezoned, and it began to die. You paid for a study to look into what should be done or what can be done to revitalize Uniontown. The consultants that you hired will be done in July. And their commitment to us is that the city has to go forward after July to make sure that the city council and the city fathers do something with Uniontown. I made a statement last week that I am ashamed that I sat up there twice while there was a study going on for Uniontown, but no one ever explained to me that the impact that had happened to Uniontown and how it had suffered. You have the ability to put 70 some lots back into the real estate portfolio in the city of Staunton. You have the ability to bring additional revenue into this city by spending money to revitalize, first with the water and sewer. You said you were allocating $4.3 million to do the water and sewer. My last time here, I told you that won't come close to touching what Uniontown is going to have. There's not a fire truck that this city has that can get down those streets if there's a fire somewhere. People don't have streetlights. Once they're hooked to the water and sewer, if we have the courage to move forward with that, then the streets also have to be widened and repaved. There's an additional $10+ million that must be spent in Uniontown. And as a developer, that's what I do. So I am hoping that you do, as Ms. Taggart said, get over yourself and move forward with helping this city be what you said you wanted it to be when you ran for office. I would like to invite you Saturday from 1 to 3 to the Booker T. Washington Gymnasium for our discussion. We are having, several of the heirs from Uniontown, several of the property owners that still own property there, I believe, coming into town. We're going to do a panel discussion with them first. There's a YouTube video that's been done on Uniontown and what it looks like now. We're hoping that somebody in our group has enough technology savvy to play that. But we're going to have that discussion at the tables. We're also going to feed you. So what better reason to come and join us? Thank you.
Thank you.
Pamela Mason Wagner, 164 North Coulter. First, I want to heartily thank you for taking the Hardy lot out of consideration for the new juvenile domestic relations court. I think you're aware I was very involved in opposing that decision, and I can't tell you how wonderful it feels as a citizen to know that your voice and others' voices are heard. So thank you for that. I would add that if you could take it out of the RFP, that would also make people feel very comfortable. Secondly, I want to thank you for arriving at the 89-cent tax rate. I also believe that those funds are needed. There are many unfilled positions in the city. I'm going to reiterate the need for a communications director, and I would hope that we can fully fund our city and its positions and the projects that everyone is committed to. I'm very in favor of the Uniontown project that Mr. Kyer referenced, and I checked a book out of the library and got to know some of those Uniontown residents in a very interesting, very easy to read pamphlet about what it was like to live in Uniontown. So I urge you all to check that out as well. Go to Booker T. Washington on Saturday, and thank you again for listening to the citizens.
Mayor Claffey, we have someone on Zoom.
Go ahead. Caller, can you hear?
I can, thank you.
Go ahead.
This is Amy Ratchford. I'm at 1001 Selma Boulevard. I first want to thank City Council for passing the tax rate that you did. I think that that was the right move, and I deeply appreciate it. And I also want to thank Councilman Robertson for bringing up my comments last week, because I think that the issue needs to continue to be examined. Because during the pandemic, the City Council did cut the school's operating budget by 1.8 million. And there was not, that we have been able to find, another school system in the entire state that had their funding cut during the pandemic. We have never seen that money replaced to the general operating funds of the school. We had asked for a true up. We were told it was not possible to put that 1.8 million. Then we backed off and said, all right, then can we have it in a lump sum so that we can put it towards the capital needs of the schools? I understand that there is an attempt to say that these smaller amounts that have been given to the schools over the past number of years equals the amount that we were promised, but those were given prior to the agreement to move forward with this 1.8. We did not ask for that to be added to the general operating support, even though that would have given us a stronger platform from which to grow with the new financial structure that we've got in place. Instead, we said, okay, please just make us whole, give us the 1.8 in a lump sum. And that has not happened. So again, Councilman Robertson, thank you for bringing this to the attention of the public again, because we would like to see that rectified.
Please.
Mayor, council, women and men. We were very happy, a lot of us in here, and hearing the Hardy lot being taken out of consideration. But I also want to clarify, because I'm not sure I understand what that means exactly, since there is, you know, the RFP and going until May 18th with the Hardy lot in it. And I'm representing myself with a small group of people representing all of the business owners in downtown Staunton, and I need to report back to them after this meeting tonight. So I need to understand exactly what to tell them about what this means. So you all were unanimous in opposing and are unanimous in looking for an alternate site, but what does that actually tangibly mean? So is it okay that I ask that question, and can someone answer for me?
You see Mr. Blair after the meeting, we'll discuss that.
Oh, okay.
We're not supposed to do give and take.
Okay, sorry.
It's okay.
Okay,
After
all
the
right.
meeting.
Okay, well,
Sure.
then you know what it is I'm going to be asking.
There you go.
Okay,
Pretty good.
Thank
all
you.
right, thank you.
Yes, hi, my name is Kristen Maxwell. I live at 813 Churchville Avenue. And I would also like to commend people for supporting the 89-cent tax, and also taking the Hardy lot at least off of immediate consideration, looking at alternatives. But what I'd like to do is just a very quick little bit of input, and that is I'd like to see a little bit more discussion. I haven't heard any discussion when we talk about various building projects and things about alternative energy sources. And I would really like to encourage the city to look at, when you're putting buildings up, like the juvenile court building, for instance, just as an example, and you were talking also about the roof project with the library, really look at the alternative sources that could be used with that roof surface with the solar. I would really like to see that, you know, part of the RFP process, at least to be looking at what your potential costs could be to do that, and then what your cost savings could be to do that. I just recently put some solar into my property, and I got my first monthly bill, full month bill since doing that. And I expected a bill for that month at about $160, and it came in at $7.92.
Oh.
So there's obviously there was cost going into that. So we'll have to see how long it takes to pay that off. But I really just encourage. The other thing along the same lines is when you guys were talking about the solar field on the edge of town. Knowing that we have such a need for affordable housing, I would also like to encourage, rather than just putting in solar fields, putting in multiple family dwellings that have solar on top of them, so that we're kind of looking at both things at one time, both affordable housing and an alternative, and we get payback when you've got a company coming in and putting those solar panels, and we're getting income in. That would help offset and maybe lower the cost of the rentals and that kind of thing in a property like that. Thank you.
Mr. Kester, anybody on Zoom?
No, sir.
Anyone else like to address city council? Going once, going twice. Meeting adjourned.
Darn.